It's time to visit again with my favorite crimp, William Scoggins, the cab driver, who, after spending 15.5 years working for defense contractor General Dynamics, decided that he wanted to drive a cab in Oak Cliff, and it just happened to be parked at the corner of 10th and Patton, where J.D. Tippit was shot down, right here by the stop sign that somebody just happened to plow through on that morning. But anyway, I'm going to start with some context because I got to build up to this. Ted Callaway here, a witness to the fleeing suspect, arrived at the scene after he saw, apparently, Oswald running away. And he picked up Tippit's gun and he ran over to Scoggins and said, "Let's go catch him," or words to that effect. And on November 23rd, on his first statement on the record, sworn affidavit, Ted Callaway said this: "I got the officer's gun and hollered at the cab driver to come on. We might catch the man. We got into his cab, number 213, and drove up Patton to Jefferson and looked all around, but did not see him." So, the point of this video is to examine where they drove to look for the fleeing Oswald, allegedly Oswald. And what Callaway says here makes perfect sense. He says they drove up Patton. By up Patton, he means south on Patton to Jefferson Boulevard, which is where he last saw Oswald running to, and which is also where William Scoggins saw Oswald running to. They both saw him, they said, running south on Patton, so it makes sense to get in the cab and go south on Patton, doesn't it? But then the hero of this video, William Scoggins, was interviewed on December 2nd by the Secret Service, and the Secret Service has a curious habit of allowing their interviewees to speak in their own words, unlike the FBI, who likes to make the words into what the FBI would like them to be sometimes. They actually quote William Scoggins. And he said, "We proceeded north on Patton and possibly turned west on 10th. We cruised an area north of 10th Street looking for the man I had seen, but we did not see him. When we left the intersection of 10th and Patton, we did not go to Patton and Jefferson, but went in a northerly direction, which would be opposite from the intersection of Patton and Jefferson Streets." Now you have to appreciate what he's saying here. He and Callaway said the witness ran south to the intersection of Patton and Jefferson Streets, but what he says here is when they got in the cab, they drove north in the opposite direction. They did not go to where the suspect ran. They went in the opposite direction to look for the suspect. So this should seem curious to anybody who's paying attention, like an investigator maybe, when the first witness, Callaway, says they went the direction that the suspect went to look for him, and then Scoggins here says they went in the opposite direction the suspect went in order to look for him. That sounds strange, doesn't it? That was December 2nd from Scoggins, and then on December 3rd, the next day, Ted Callaway told the Secret Service, the same people that Scoggins talked to here, he talked to them and told them this: "After 2 or 3 minutes at the shooting scene, I picked up the police officer's service revolver and got the cab driver at the scene to help me try and find the man that I had seen with the pistol. We turned west on 10th and south on Crawford to Jefferson, and then west on Jefferson to Beckley, where we turned north. During the time we were on Jefferson, we did not see the man with the pistol." So here, Callaway, after probably having been talked to by somebody, alters his original story. His original story was they just went south on Patton to Jefferson and couldn't find him. Now he says they went north, and what he means by north is just turning left really at the corner and going west on 10th. that might be driving north about 15 feet before turning left to go west, and then he goes south on Crawford. But that's not what Scoggins said. Scoggins never says they went, it says they didn't go south at all. It's very clear what Scoggins says. So we have a bit of a contradiction here, even after Ted Callaway makes his adjustment, where they go north 15 feet. I appropriated somebody's map here. I think it might have come from John Armstrong, but I forget. But anyway, I've added clutter to it. Maybe it'll help illustrate what I'm babbling about here. The big red arrow that looks, it's from the big red arrow that doesn't look like it was drawn by a mentally challenged person, points to about where Scoggins' cab was sitting. And the blue line on Patton Street that goes south of there, that's the direction they said the shooter ran, Oswald. And the red line shows a Callaway's second story, where they take a left on 10th Street, and then they take a left on Crawford, and then they take a right on Jefferson. But the green area that I've circled up there, that's where Scoggins says they went. So Scoggins says they went north, Callaway says they went south. And I put all of Scoggins' statements together here. He only says what direction they went one time. That's the one time on December 2nd to the Secret Service. But he couldn't avoid being asked about it. Eventually, when he talked to the Warren Commission, they asked him which way he went. And his answer was, "I couldn't tell you." I think he's really trying to avoid perjury charges here. And then he says he was doing the driving and Callaway was doing the directing. So he shifts it all off on the Callaway. He doesn't say, "I can't remember." He says, "I couldn't tell you." But the one time he said what they did was they drove north. So I think this means... Now, I've long thought now that both Callaway and Scoggins are planted witnesses working for the conspiracy. I think the way they handle this is they tell the witnesses their particular part. They tell them what lies to tell, and then everything else, just tell the truth. I think that's the way they handle this sort of a witness. And I think somebody didn't think of telling Scoggins that you're supposed to say you're following where the witness went. Because I think he just told the truth about where they drove. And probably the truth was that Callaway said to drive north because they weren't trying to find Oswald. What they were doing was securing possession of Tippett's gun. They wanted, because what was going on here was they were switching one of the guns that shot JFK, they were switching it with Tippett's gun so that Tippett could be blamed for shooting JFK if it became necessary to give Oswald an accomplice. If it became necessary to explain a .38 having been used in Dealey Plaza, then they were going to blame Tippett. So Callaway's purpose and Scoggins' purpose was to get possession of that gun so that nobody else got possession of it, to drive around with it for a while, and then to return to the scene and presumably to give it to Sergeant Croy. That's where the official story has the gun going. It may be they didn't even bring it back. They may have brought it somewhere else. And maybe Scoggins was told not to say that, and he remembered not to say that. But I don't know exactly where that gun went. It might have gone to Croy, because Croy is waving a gun around at some point. But whatever. They weren't looking. The point is, they weren't looking for the shooter. They were conspiracy-planted witnesses there. Their job was to secure Tippett's gun so that the conspiracy kept control of the gun. And here it comes out in an account by Scoggins where he blurts out the truth, apparently because nobody told him he was supposed to lie about that.